Hello everyone, glad to be back. Today is 27th of June, now it's 10:30 in the morning Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update today, in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. Second update will be a little bit late on my Patreon, in which I will share additional news that will be reported by Russian media. I do make extra content for Patreon on regular basis in attempt to generate additional interest among members of our community towards Patreon page, because it's one of the major lifelines for this project, and I will be immensely happy if you will consider to join my Patreon. You will see a link under this video in the description box or in the pinned comment. That's been said, let's talk about news now, and I will start with Russia and statements that the President of Russian Federation did made yesterday late afternoon. Putin did spoke about crisis that took place in Russia during the previous weekends, and he did thank Russian public for demonstration of unity. He also thanked members of Russian state institutions, including security forces and defense ministry. And he did spoke about PMC Wagner, and he did said that PMC Wagner fighters will have a choice, as it was articulated in agreement with PMC, and PMC fighters may join defense ministry if they want to and sign a contract, or they can move to Belarus. So Putin gonna stay true to his words, and PMC Wagner fighters won't be punished for their participation in armed rebellion, as Putin himself did characterize that development regarding to PMC. So there was some significant interest towards Putin's statements yesterday, because when Peskov did announce that President will make statement later on, you should see what was going on Russian language pages on internet. There were so many rumors and so many predictions, especially about possible changes in defense ministry. But I was skeptical of it, to be honest, because as far as I know, Putin don't act on emotions and Putin don't act under pressure. He has a very different style of decision making, and I did not expect any announcement about any changes in defense ministry yesterday. And I did share quite a few times before my take on the entire topic. If there will be any changes at all in defense ministry, in leadership of defense ministry, it will happen at least in a couple of weeks or maybe even a couple of months time. And Putin probably won't fire anybody. What will happen is that yet again, if we will see any changes at all in leadership of defense ministry, Shoigu probably will resign and he will articulate his reasoning. His deputies will do the same, I guess, majority of deputies at least, and maybe very same will happen in general staff. And Putin will approve resignation of those officials. That's my take on it, but it will definitely won't happen in next few days, because as I said, Putin not acting like that. He's always taking time whenever he is making some serious decisions, and I don't think he will change his style of dealing with difficult issues for any reason, really. So that's when it comes to Putin's statements. Also yesterday there was some reports that Belarusian President Lukashenko will simultaneously with Putin will make a statement, but later on press service of Lukashenko dismissed this information, and they said that Lukashenko will have a meeting with journalists today. So probably we will learn today some additional information about negotiations that did take place with leadership of PMC, with active participation of Lukashenko, and maybe we will learn from Lukashenko some additional information about PMC Wagner, what their task will be in Belarus. I have my ideas about it, and I did spoke quite a few times before that. In my understanding, regrouping or deployment of PMC Wagner units to Belarus is a crucial stage to prepare Belarus for possible incursion from Poland and maybe Baltic states. And by the way, we should always remember, or we should keep in mind, that there was some reports that Polish secret services did recruit citizens of Belarus all around Europe, hundreds of them, and they are giving now training, military training, to those individuals, and they are trained also in sabotage activity. And as I understand, and according to some reports that we see in many sources, Warsaw is intending to use these Belarusians that they did recruit to send them in Ukraine, and then destabilize situation in Belarus, and try to conduct some regime change. And what is very interesting, according to latest informations that we are receiving on various sources, majority of PMC units will move to Belarus, and the lowest number that I see is about 20 to 25,000 fighters, which is, if we take in account how effective Wagnerites are really in military operations, we can say that Belarus is basically receiving additional army, a very capable army. And I guess because if this is true, and if majority of units will move to Belarus, like 20 to 25,000 strong, then maybe this step is also can be interpreted as a preparations not just for incursion of some sabotage groups from Poland or Baltic states, but maybe this step is a preparation for a possible invasion of Belarus by Polish regular army. Because as I said, man, numbers do have meaning, for God's sake, and 20 to 25 fighters of PMC Wagner, that's entire army, which is absolutely not necessary to deal with some few hundred saboteurs, isn't it? So maybe intelligence service of Belarus and intelligence service of Russia do have some additional information about inevitability of Polish invasion of Belarus, which will be huge mistake on part of current leadership of Poland, because after all, Russia deploying basically not just the PMC Wagner units in Belarus, but Russian military personnel is also presented in Belarus. And after all, Russia did deploy in Belarus tactical nuclear weapons. And still, if Warsaw is considering invasion of this republic, then, well, that will be a suicidal mission for Polish elites, isn't it? And I hope Polish society will wake up and demand from the government to stay away, not just from Belarus or Kaliningrad region, but also from Ukraine, and to minimize Polish involvement in Ukrainian conflict, because this is not a joke, for God's sake, isn't it? If Warsaw will make such crucial mistake, and if it will get involved in direct clashes with the Belarusian and Russian forces, no matter it's in Belarusian soil, in Kaliningrad region of Russian Federation, or in Ukraine, then Moscow will have all the legit reasonings to strike back, and that strike will be very effective. And well, let's hope we will not see this level of escalation, but anyway, fact itself that majority of PMC Wagner units are probably moving to Belarus does raise this question, why, what is happening? Because to be honest, I don't believe that Russia will in any time soon will try to conduct some offensive operation from Belarus in direction of Kiev. Not in foreseeable future anyway. But again, let's see how the situation developed. Let me continue now, and first of all, I will share with you a quick summary of situation on the front line. So I will start with Kherson region. As you know, during previous days, Ukrainian forces did manage to establish a bridgehead on the left bank of the Dnieper River, right next to Antonovsky Bridge. And according to some reports, Ukrainian forces are now trying to widen this land bridge, and they may have had established operational control over some areas of the left bank, but during the night Russian forces did conduct some local scale counteroffensive to neutralize these forces, Ukrainian forces. I did share on my Telegram page, this is it by the way, strikes from Russian MLRS systems and MS TOS-1 A flamethrowers, Solntsepek flamethrowers towards Ukrainian forces on the left bank. And for this moment it's not yet clear, did Russian side manage to establish full control over the left bank and neutralize these Ukrainian forces, or they still remain on the left bank. I guess they still are on the left bank, otherwise Russian media will report about it. And even though this current operation from Ukrainian side is a recon operation, just an attempt to establish bridgehead, I predict that in next few days or maybe few weeks, Ukrainian side will try simultaneous counteroffensive operations or simultaneous offensive operations in this land bridge in South Donetsk direction, in Zaporozhye sector of the front line as a whole, and in Kherson region. And when it comes to Kherson region, I expect some attempt from Ukrainian forces of mass crossing of the Dnieper River, and because first line of defense of Russian side was seriously damaged by flooding after Zelensky's regime destroyed Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant. There are some possibility that Ukrainian forces in attempt of a mass crossing of the Dnieper River will manage to go through first line of defense, which is, as I said, almost destroyed, and Russian side don't really had enough time to build up new first line. But second line of defense and third line of defense are intact, basically, and I guess even if Ukrainian forces will manage to penetrate first line of defense, eventually entire their offensive movement will end up being suicidal operation, like it was on the first stage of Ukrainian counteroffensive in Orekhov direction and in direction of this land bridge between Ugledar and Gulay-Pole, so-called Vremensky Ledge. So let's see how the situation develop, but I did predict it. Activization of Ukrainian forces in Kherson region, and we are beginning to see this activization. And fairly soon, because Washington and London are not giving a break to Zelensky's regime, and they are continuing to demand continuation of this so-called counteroffensive, I guess in coming days or weeks we will see simultaneous offensive of Ukrainian forces, second wave of so-called counteroffensive on this land bridge, well, I guess Russian side is ready to deal with any Ukrainian forces on the Kherson region, like they are ready in Zaporozhye sector of the front. And when it comes to Zaporozhye region, by the way, it's of course artillery duels between the sides, but same time there are some serious clashes in traditional hot points, which is Pitikhatki, Zhiribyanki direction, also Orekhovo direction. Ukrainian forces are trying to establish some bridgehead in this area, but hot point is also this Remensky ledge, in which Ukrainian forces did manage to achieve some success. And yesterday we did have reports that Romnopol, this settlement here, have become under control of Ukrainian forces. But still, Russian side is holding some high ground on this Remensky ledge, and what is most important, entire this area, not even on the first line of defense of Russian forces. First line of defense is in some distance from that area, and Ukrainian forces, despite fourth week of this counteroffensive, did not yet reach even first line of Russian defense. That's when it comes to Zaporozhye region. Donetsk direction is of course also very active, and usually it's Marinka direction, which is disputed between the sides, and of course Avdiivka. We did not have any reports of any breakthrough from Russian or Ukrainian sides. So it's a kind of operational pause in this area, and probably this will stay this way at least as long as the situation will resolve, will become more clear with Ukrainian counteroffensive. Because of course main attention of Russian side, at least for now, on the southern part of the front and Donetsk front line is this so-called Ukrainian counteroffensive. But and by the way, Ukrainian forces did yet again try to conduct some offensive operations in direction of Bakhmut, on the flanks of Bakhmut. Ukrainian sources are reporting that they did had some success, and they did establish control over the Berkhovka water reservoir here. Russian side denies these claims, but we clearly do see attempts from Ukrainian side. They are sending more and more reinforcements from the strategic reserves to somehow penetrate Russian defense lines and establish operational control or operational encirclement over the Bakhmut, but they are clearly not effective enough, and they are not really achieving much, at least for this moment. And situation is also difficult in Berkhovka, not Berkhovka, but Belogorovka in Seversk direction. This settlement is also constantly disputed between the divided between the sides, and even though there was some reports that Russian side did manage to achieve some success in this direction, I did not see photo or video confirmation of that. So I will say that this area is still disputed between the sides. No one side has any significant success, and the situation is changing quite rapidly on the Kupiansk direction. During the previous days, yesterday basically, we did not have any information about fierce fighting in Kupiansk direction, but late afternoon and this morning we did receive information that Russian forces continue their offensive in Kupiansk direction and did manage to achieve breach. Basically, they did manage to breach Ukrainian defense lines, and according to some reports, Russian forces are moving towards Kupiansk from southern side and northern side. So maybe in the next week or two, Kupiansk itself will become a hot point, because according to some reports, Russian forward units are just in a few kilometers from Kupiansk. Some say it's 1 kilometer, some reports say it's 2 kilometers, but basically Russian forces are in outskirts of Kupiansk at this moment. So this is quick summary of the situation of the front line. Of course, main setback for Russian forces were withdrawal from Ravnopol, because this settlement is on high ground, but according to Russian side, forward units of Russian forces in this bridgehead still remain on in control of some high ground that higher than Ravnopol, so that gives Russian forces opportunity to have operational control over the entire this area. But after all, if Zelensky's regime had any success during this counteroffensive, basically this success was on this land bridge, because Ukrainian forces did manage to establish control over the quite a few settlements, latest one being Ravnopol. And of course, it's a setback for Russian side when Ukrainian forces are managing to establish bridgehead on the left bank of the river. But yet again, this kind of attempts did take place previously also quite a few times, and if we did not see in coming days mass attempt from Ukrainian side to cross Dnieper River in mass, then probably it's only a matter of time and Russian side will force these Ukrainian special forces to retreat on the right bank of the Dnieper. Let's see how situation will develop. And now some other news, and RIA Novosti is reporting that according to Russian Defense Ministry, Russian armed forces did manage to destroy yet another armed column of Ukrainian forces on South Donetsk direction, which is basically this bridgehead between Ugledar and Gulyai-Pole. And I did share on my Telegram this video footage in which you clearly see that Ukrainian armed column is moving through the field, basically open field, and Russian artillery did take just look at this one. It's open terrain, and Ukrainian forces are trying to move without cover, without anything, and it's not surprised that Russian artillery did take care of this column, and military vehicles were destroyed one by one. And as you can see, Ukrainian forces did lost not just armored personnel carriers, but manpower. Let's continue. This is RIA Novosti's report also about successful offensive operations of local scale offensive operations of Russian forces in Kupiansk direction. I did share video this information just a minute ago, and this is reported by Andrei Marochko, military expert from LPR. And yes, it's many sources are confirming that Russian side did had in recent weeks quite significant success in Kupiansk direction, and in next week or two Kupiansk itself may become a hot point on this sector of the front. And next information is also very significant, because Andrei Marochko, a military expert from LPR, did say that Ukrainian forces use ammunition with chemical substances on Solidar direction, and according to Marochko, when this ammunition is exploding, some gas is have been created as a result of that, and people are experiencing burning of the skin, and if they are inhaling this gas, they are passing out. So I guess the Russian side will document this case of use of chemical weapons by Zelensky's regime, and during the day the defense ministry will probably make statement about it. This is not the first instance when Ukrainian forces allegedly using chemical weapons, and I'm afraid this is not the last case of that. Just recently we did had a report that Ukrainian forces are mining reservoirs with chlorine in Kherson region, and are conducting some activity there, which may be indicator that they are planning some terrorist attack. They may planning to blow up those reservoirs with chlorine, or maybe they intend to use chlorine as a weapon during the attempt of mass crossing of the Dnieper River. Let me continue now, and this is also interesting news. RIA Novosti is reporting that yesterday two Russian Su-27 fighter jets did intercept UK's surveillance plane RS-135 and two British Typhoon fighters, Eurofighter Typhoon fighters. Well, on the map you can clearly see, for example, that this instance did take place not far away from Crimea, and whenever we are seeing UK's or US surveillance planes over the Black Sea, especially in close proximity from Crimea, in the day after or in a few days after Zelensky's regime usually are conducting drone strikes and missile strikes on Crimea, and on this land bridge between Crimea and mainland Russia. And I'm afraid we will see exactly the same at this time also. And by the way, I did share on my Telegram channel video of interception itself, but this is, once again, this is act of war in my understanding, because the UK and the US are actively gathering surveillance information and are sharing this information with Zelensky's regime, and eventually this activity of UK and US are helping Zelensky's regime to kill Russian citizens. So in my reading, in my understanding, these steps from UK and the US are act of war, and if I was president of Russian Federation, that's how I will perceive this kind of activity, and I will act accordingly. But Russian side, current leadership of Russian side is has much softer approach, and because of that, unfortunately, I guess UK and US elites of UK and US will continue this extremely hostile activity towards Russia, and many citizens of Russia will die because of intelligence information that UK and US is sharing with Zelensky's regime. That's unfortunate reality that we are facing, really. Let me continue. And by the way, just a few minutes ago, we did had reports that railway was damaged in Crimea, in Kirovsk area, and this was reported by Sergei Aksyonov, head of Autonomous Republic. And well, even though in this information we did not see reasoning We don't have statements about reasoning that this railway was damaged, but probably it was sabotage. Probably it was sabotage, and well, thankfully, this damaged railway was a movement of trains on this railway was stopped in time, and no one was hurt. But you can imagine how dangerous it is when civilian trains are constantly moving on these very busy railways, and if any civilian train will derail, I mean, it will be a tragedy, of course. But Zelensky's regime, and do they care about lives? No, they don't care about Ukrainian lives. Of course, they don't care Russian lives. No doubt about that. But unfortunately, this is also the reality that Russian citizens are forced to face. Let me continue now. And by the way, head of Ukraine's foreign ministry was forced to come up with some explanations why Ukraine, or did try to justify why Ukrainian counteroffensive is not achieving much. And this time he did blame catastrophic failure of this so-called counteroffensive of Zelensky's regime on mines. Now he did blame mines, that, you know, it's mines on the fields, and it's difficult to conduct counteroffensive. I mean, by the way, what is wrong with you, isn't it? I mean, it's a military conflict. Of course, you're gonna deal with mines during any offensive operation, isn't it? And if you were not ready, why you did to deal, including with mines? Why you did even start this counteroffensive? But we all understand that Zelensky's regime don't really have any choice. Washington and London are demanding from them to conduct offensives, and Zelensky's regime basically sacrificing the last reserves of Ukrainian armed forces to achieve at least anything on the front line. But for now, at least for now, they did not even manage to breach first line of defense. And only more or less significant success that they had is these few villages on the Remensky Ledge that they managed to establish control of with the unbelievably heavy price that was paid for this. And of course, you'll see these dozens and dozens of destroyed Ukrainian military equipment on this direction. And as I said previously, according to some sources, since the beginning of this so-called counteroffensive, Ukrainian side did already lost, or Zelensky's regime did already lost, up to 15,000 soldiers, which is unbelievable, isn't it? And Zelensky's regime is continuing to send more and more forces on the front line, so they're Kiev basically continuing to sacrifice their last reserves. Now this is very significant information, by the way. RIA Novosti is reporting that, and this information based on statement of Vladimir Rogov, head of NGO We Are Together with Russia from Zaporozhye region. And according to Rogov, Zelensky's regime has at least few scenario of provocation on Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. Lately, too much talk about Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. Head of Ukrainian military intelligence, Kirill Budanov, did spoke about ZNPP. Zelensky did spoke about Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. Many other officials in Ukraine are talking about Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. This topic is, constantly one of the main topics in Ukrainian media, and also in Western media. They are almost on daily basis articles about Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, which does indicates that some provocations definitely have been planned by Zelensky's regime and his Western masters, because of course Zelensky and his associates not gonna do anything with Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, in direction of Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, without permission from Western masters of theirs in Washington and London, particularly. Well, this is very dangerous. This is very dangerous stuff, because first of all, any damage to nuclear reactors will impact enormous areas, and hundreds of thousands of people may be forced to evacuate. And this damage, of course, will last for decades and decades. And by the way, what is also important, that any provocation in direction of ZNPP may be used by Zelensky and his associates and some extremely radical wings or groups in Western elites to provoke direct clashes between Russia and NATO. Probably it's not a coincidence that just a few days ago, Lindsey Graham, this neocon, quite influential, unfortunately, neocon in Washington, did, together with the neocon from Democrat side, did made a statement and did present a resolution according to which use of nuclear weapons by Russia on Ukrainian soil should be received by NATO as an attack of NATO, and NATO should react in that case. So we clearly see that something has been in work here, and that's why I think this is very dangerous. This is very dangerous because Zelensky's regime definitely can strike Zaporozhye nuclear power plant with Storm Shadow missiles or with HIMARS missiles, and if any leakage of radiation, then they can say, Western elites may say, you know what, that's Russia did it. Russia did use nuclear energy on Ukrainian soil. This is threat for NATO, and we should act now and intervene. And in that case, we will end up in direct clashes between the sides. So it's dangerous stuff. Hopefully sane people in Western elites, if there is any, will prevail, and there will be no provocation towards Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, and there will be no direct clashes between Russia and NATO. But anything is possible at this stage. Anything is possible, really. Unfortunately, any level of escalation is a possibility. Let me continue now, and this is RIA Novosti's report, according to which German officials did share information with the German TV channel ARD, that peaceful talks about Ukraine may begin in June, and in these peace talks actively may participate Brazil, India, South Africa, and China, BRICS member states, also USA, of course, and whenever we see USA, UK also gonna be right next to it. But well, to be honest, I don't believe that Washington and London will allow any peace talks, any real peace talks about Ukraine anytime soon, because they did not achieve all their goals yet. So of course it's a honorable gesture from South Africa, Brazil, India, China, many other countries to push this peace narrative, but unfortunately we have to be realists, isn't it? Unfortunately, as long as Washington and London are not willing to talk about peace, there will be no peace. And nothing is indicating, at least for now, that elites in US and UK are ready to de-escalate and start peace negotiations. There's nothing is indicating that. And just to prove it, by the way, we have information. Interfax is reporting that US did prepare yet another package of military aid for Zelensky's regime. This time it will be $500 million, and Zelensky's regime will receive 50 heavy armored vehicles, mainly armored personal carriers. It will be 30 Bradleys and 20-25 Striker armored personal carriers. Also, Zelensky's regime will receive ammunition for HIMARS, multi-launch rocket systems, and Patriot air defense systems, and there will be some additional weapons and ammunition. So, you know, when we have in one hand information that there may be some peace talks in June, and in the other hand, this information here that US has been preparing a new package of military aid, and this time for 500 million. I mean, who are you gonna believe? Where is the indicators that Washington is willing to talk peace? There is no such indications, no, whatsoever. And let me continue now. This is TASS News Agency's report, according to which official representatives of G7 states did discuss situation in Russia. This is reported by Financial Times. So yes, G7 members of G7 did discuss situation in Russia, especially during that crisis regarding to PMC Wagner. But well, they are not alone, really. Entire world was watching and waiting, because if any significant destabilization of Russia, of course it will straight away impact entire world. And well, thankfully situation was resolved fairly soon, in short amount of time. Putin did manage to deal with this issue, Putin and his government, and of course with participation of President of Belarus. But anyhow, situation was resolved in extremely short amount of time, when we are, if we are taking in account scale of problem. And well, in some sense, of course, it was damaging for Russia. Undoubtedly, it was damaging for Russia. But same time, Russia did demonstrate that it can deal even with this kind of difficulties in short amount of time and stay united. So yes, we have not just damage that was done to Russia, but also we have this demonstration of unity in Russia, which is extremely important, isn't it? So yes, G7 countries did discuss situation in Russia. Probably Western elites were happy in the beginning, but later on, when they learned that situation was resolved, yes, they were very much upset. But you know, Western elites, man, most destructive force in this world. they should be neutralized somehow, man. I don't know how, but they should be neutralized somehow, because they are happy whenever some difficulties are happening in the world, and they are extremely upset when something good is happening in the world. So they are definitely most destructive force on this planet. RIA Novosti's report that that's quite interesting. According to RIA Novosti, during that crisis on weekends, there was some direct communication between Moscow and Washington, which is good, by the way. I mean, communication is better than no communication. So probably some lines, some reserve lines of communication still exist between Moscow and Washington, and these lines were used during that crisis. And by the way, we did had reports that even Biden did said in one of his statements that US has nothing to do with that crisis and with PMC Wagner's activity. And to be honest, in this case, I do believe that US or Western elites have nothing to do with PMC Wagner's moves. Initially there were so much negative in some sources in the West, in the Russia, towards PMC Wagner. Some even did blame Wagnerites that they are working on behalf of Western secret services. There were some allegations towards Prigozhin. I mean, and that was sad to watch, really, because PMC Wagner did prove on the battlefield on which side they are. And to see on some Telegram pages or some media outlets these allegations that now somehow Wagner is acting on behalf of or under orders of Western elites, that was not good sign, really. That was unfortunate. And now this kind of stuff has stopped. But initially there was some strong statements from some people that I was quite surprised to hear or to read about. But yes, Biden did make statement that US has nothing to do with current activity of PMC Wagner. And well, to be honest, I believe that Prigozhin and PMC Wagner did act by their own some calculations, by their own plan, and they did not receive any orders from any Western secret services. No, man, I'm never gonna believe that Prigozhin is working for, I don't know, MI6 of UK or CIA of USA or any other secret service. I'm not gonna believe in that kind of stuff. Never. Otherwise, I mean, give us factual proof. Then let's talk about it. But without factual evidence, there's no way I'm gonna believe that they had anything to do with Western elites or Western secret services. Let me continue now. Even though this armed rebellion itself was a mistake, I said quite a few times before, man, that me personally, I will never support any illegal actions in Russia. Just never. It's impossible. I will never support that because it's too dangerous. Everything in Russia should be conducted according to constitution and rule of law. We may not be happy about many stuff, man. Russia is not perfect, like no one other country is perfect. There is no perfect states in this world, but we should always act according to constitution and rule of law. So that's why I cannot support actions that Wagnerites did during that crisis. But Very same time, I will always acknowledge that Wagnerites are patriots of Russia, and they did play immensely important role to defend Russia, Russian society, and they will continue to act this way, no matter where they are operating. They will always be true fighters of Russia. That's my take on this topic. No matter where they are in Middle East, in North Africa or Central Africa, or in Belarus, or just in Latin America, they will always, or in Ukraine, they will always act as fighters of Russian Federation. I believe in this. You may agree with me or disagree, but that's my take on it, man. So let me continue now. And how long is this video? And by the way, we should never forget that Wagner fighters did give their lives for this existential fight between Russia and Western elites. And many Wagnerites lost their health in this fight. So I don't think anyone has any right to forget about all the good that Wagnerites or Wagner fighters did, all the sacrifice that they did face just because of this one mistake. And it was mistake, undoubtedly. As I said, man, I cannot support any military rebellion or any unconstitutional actions. I just cannot support that. It's too dangerous. It's too dangerous, and we are all lucky that this situation did result in fairly short time without some extreme levels of escalation. Let me continue now. And by the way, this is also quite interesting news. RT is reporting that Germany had made decision to permanently deploy troops near Russian borders in Lithuania, and 4,000 German soldiers will be deployed in that Baltic state. Quite interesting development, because just a day ago NATO did make decision to change status of NATO fighters activities in over the Baltic Sea. And if before these deployments of NATO fighter jets on Baltic was regarded as non-military, not non-combat missions, now these operations will receive status combat operations, which is very strange because as far as I know, NATO is not involved in any combat on the Baltic. But this status, combat status, will give additional legal means to NATO to escalate basically anytime they want. So this is also a significant step in my understanding, and I guess Moscow is paying close attention to this development, because NATO is moving more and more installations towards Russia and more military equipment and manpower. And this is serious, though. This is serious, especially when we perfectly well know what kind of individuals are running show in the West, in Western elites. Let me continue now. And well, Interfax is reporting that first bunch of US Abrams main battle tanks will arrive in Poland in a fairly short amount of time, and before end of this year. Poland will receive 28 additional Abrams tanks, and in 2024 42 another Abrams tanks. These tanks are latest versions, as I understand, of these MBTs, and well, Poland is spending quite a amount of money on defense. Recently they are basically creating whole new army and whole new regiments, and they are buying HIMARS, says they are buying Abrams tanks, and well, they definitely are preparing for something. And well, let's hope Polish elites will not lose contact with reality, and won't provoke any direct confrontation between Russia and Poland, because it will be true devastation. Let's continue, and few more news. How long is this video? Wow, it's already hour, man. So Kommersant is reporting that Russian aerospace forces did conduct tactical trainings over the Baltic Sea. Maybe this is a response on decision of NATO to reclassify NATO fighter jet missions in the combat missions. Maybe this information has nothing to do with that, but well, Russian aerospace forces and Russian air forces of Baltic fleet did conduct some tactical training. So let me continue. RIA Novosti is reporting that Russian ambassador in China made a statement that NATO is planning to divide Eurasia in some local economical, political and military blocs to somehow maintain its influence. And well, this is open secret, isn't it? Igor Margunov, Russian ambassador in China, is absolutely correct. Western elites do try quite intensively to create some local economical, political and military alliances in Eurasian region, especially in Indo-Pacific region. And unfortunately, Western elites do have some success in this regard, but hopefully majority of states will realize what is going on, and they will try to maintain good relationships with the neighboring states without dividing each other for a friend or foe. Let me continue. This is RT's report about stabilization of on the oil prices after recent events in Russia. Of course, oil prices also react on that, and there was some turbulence, but because situation that was resolved, in a day, basically in 24 hours, 24 to 36 hours. Oil market is also get stabilized. Also information from China. This year Chinese government is expecting growth of GDP up to 5%, which is a huge number if we consider scale of Chinese economy. 5% is quite an achievement, really. And China is, yes, Chinese economy is standing strong, and it's good, man. It's good for Russia, it's good for China, it's good for entire world, really. And hopefully someday I don't know how, but hopefully world elites will manage to have some proper talk and de-escalate, because there are too many zones of escalation. It's Western elites are in conflict with Russia, and there is a Ukrainian conflict. Western elites are in conflict with China, and there are quite tense situation there. Western elites, Russian elites, Chinese elites are in conflict on some other regions of this world, and which is creating some additional problems for those regions. And well, the escalation truly needed in this world, that's for sure. Let me continue, and by the way, this is quite interesting. RT is reporting that export of LNG to Georgia did increase nearly 30%, which is maybe not some unbelievable numbers, but yet again, this information is interesting, because relationships between Russia and Georgia lately are becoming better and better, and whenever I see any information that are confirming this, I usually do share it on my updates. So yes, great news. I mean, relationships between Russia and Georgia are improving in rapid pace. Georgia is becoming one of the major suppliers of Russian market in many items, like wine, for example, in many products. And well, of course, Russia is also gaining some market share in Georgia, in some other spheres, which is, I mean, normal business, isn't it? So this is it. This is it for today's update. Of course, if there will be any additional interesting information, I will share it on my Telegram and in my second update for Patreon. I hope you will find this video interesting, and if so, please hit that like button and leave some commentary about any topic you like. Literally any topic you like. More likes and comments, my updates will have more chances are that I will reach a wider audience. And if you can, please share links to my videos or my channel with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, Telegram, or any other platform that you are active on. And if you think this channel is interesting, informative, useful, and deserves to exist, please consider to support with small donations through PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, or by subscribing to my Patreon page. You will see links under this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. This is it for now. As you can see, I'm quite tired. Video is long, 1 hour, constant talk about news. It may seems easy, but it's not always the case. So this is it for now. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a great day and take care.